Good evening, and on behalf of Akshar Arbol International School, I welcome each one of you who has made the time to be with us this Sunday evening. Apologies for a small technical glitch that we've had, which has delayed our start this evening. Food is the ingredient that binds all of us together. Very recently, I saw this on a fridge magnet, and I was thinking to myself how true this is. Every social gathering, be it from birthdays to weddings to house meets over the weekends, centers around food. Lunchtimes at school are very special because food often becomes that anchor around which children learn nuanced ways of demonstrating social behaviors. And for us as adults, that lunch dabba is the quintessential sharing of a part of ourselves and our lives. From passionate bursts of what we like and don't like to the sharing of the secret ingredients that make up our recipes. With the pandemic having hit us, the kitchen has become a focal point in our homes, which for many months now has also become our workplaces. Stories abound social media, stories of experiments, discoveries, creating memories together with our loved ones, all around the theme of food. Some very simple kitchen hacks to more elaborate immunity building, long forgotten family recipes. There's suddenly a lot of renewed interest in food. Hence, as part of commemorating this year's National Nutrition Week at Akshar Arbol International School, we decided to cook a conversation around this theme. After all, the route to nurturing young minds is through their tummies. We are delighted to present a ladle full of simple, wholesome love. For as someone said, cooking is love made visible. Let me just take a couple of minutes more to introduce our panelists for this evening. And I'll begin with Ms. Sharmila Ribeiro. Ms. Sharmila is an agricultural economist and a mother of 3 growing boys. She has a MS in agricultural economics from Rutgers University in USA and has been a rural development professional for half her life. She is the co-founder of Appropriate Technology India and Devbhoomi Natural Products Producer Company in the Garhwal Himalayas in Uttarakhand. Over the years, her experience and knowledge of agriculture, simple rural food habits, practical nutrition, organic food, and the environment led her to go back to the basics, a healthy cooking and eating. Ms. Sharmila says that she loves good food, traveling, trekking, music, reading, and the great outdoors. What a range of interests over there. Sharmila is the author of Everyday Love, a mother's guide to healthy cooking for kids. She is passionate about women's issues, the state of our villages, the environment, and just saying no to junk food. Moving on to our second panelist for today, Ms. Aarti Sundaresan. Aarti Sundaresan is an engineer by education, a Pilates trainer by profession, and a school teacher by passion. She has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from BITS Pilani and a master's degree from the Oregon State University. After working for 7 long years designing analog circuits in New Jersey in the USA, Aarti decided to pursue her interest in fitness by getting trained as a Pilates professional with the United States Pilates Association in New York. After 2 years of training and teaching, she moved to India to set up her classical Pilates studio at Chennai. A chance event led her to take up a part-time teaching role with us at Akshar Arbol International School. For 5 years, Aarti balanced her time between running her Pilates studio, teaching design and technology at school, and setting up our Makerspace program. She's currently enjoying a reduced workload on the professional front as running behind 3 young boys is keeping her very busy. Our final panelist for today is Ms. Janani Kannan. Janani Kannan is a chocolatier and a patisserie by profession. She owns her brand Zitter for handcrafted luxury chocolates and is just getting started with the brand Zest for Pastries. Her USP is fusing Indian flavors such as chakra pongal, panchamridam, mishri doi, pan, and so on into chocolates. She holds a Diploma de Patisserie from the Le Cordon Bleu, Kuala Lumpur, and has trained under world renowned chocolatiers. Janani also holds a postgraduate diploma from the Indian Institute of Management at Kozhikode. She loves cooking king size meals and hosting people over. She has a 4-year-old daughter who is an ideal eater until now, but seems to be slowly transforming into a picky one. Isn't that something we all go through as mothers? All right, welcome to each one of you here, Sharmila, Aarti, and Janani. And we look forward to an engaging Sunday evening, listening to the stories from your homes and your hearts right into ours. Over to you, Janani.
Thank you so much, Prabha. I really appreciate the school's effort in hosting a conversation like this, right in the line of Nutrition Week and helping parents. And it's aptly titled also, A Ladleful of Simple, Wholesome Love. Now, like simple, yes, that's the meal that most of us make. Like, we don't have time. So simple, yes. Love, of course. Love is always something that we put in as a special ingredient, especially when we're cooking for our kids. Wholesome, now that's where wholesome, healthy eating, nutrition, all these words all mean the same, but I think all of us have different ideas about it. Like if I'm going to ask my mother, she's a blind believer that our ancestors have it all figured out. They've set us on track with the most perfect balanced meal in the world. Just follow your ethnic cuisine and you'll be fine. Now for someone who is working alone, living alone, and just swiggies his way like every day, just getting a cook to come home and make food at home by itself is a big switch and transition towards homemade food. Doesn't matter if that's going to be aloo paratha and butter, but it's still healthy eating compared to swiggying every day. So just like as a baker, I work with butter and sugar and everything that probably Sharmila is going to frown upon like every single day. But where my idea of healthy is, it's not going to be like an everyday affair, and there's like portion control. There are so many, and eating on time. I think that's one of the more important passive criteria of healthy eating. So we all have our, these are my takes on healthy eating also. Like, and now Aarti, you've been in the fitness industry for this long. You've had clients who come to you for advice on topics like healthy eating. And as a mother of 3 children in the last 8-9 years would have been only about healthy eating and how to get the best for your children. So what is your idea on this? What is your whole take on healthy eating or nutrition?
Absolutely, Janani. So like you rightfully said, having been in the fitness profession for a while, I believe that fitness and nutrition are kind of 2 sides of the same coin. So there doesn't exist one without the other. And I've been asked so many questions by my clients. They just assume if you're a trainer, you're also a nutrition expert. So I've always been interested in finding out about healthy eating and wholesome eating. And like you said, again, having 3 children, young children who are whose dietary needs are different because they're at different age levels. I've always been on the lookout for, healthy eating ideas and tips. So when you talk about healthy eating, on the surface, to me, it seems something that's well balanced in terms of, the different food groups, and also something that's well timed is a healthy meal. That's, like I said, just on the surface. But when you scratch through it, when I think about it, I think there are 2 pillars on which this whole healthy eating rests, according to me. Okay. The first thing would be variety in food. When I mean variety, I'm talking about, circulating through or having different vegetables, having different fruits, having different grains. You have wheat and the different other grains and rice and different sources of fat. So using different kinds of oil to cook. Also, deriving your taste from different sources. For instance, if you're talking about sweet, you don't make all your sweets with sugar, but then you use some jaggery, you use some honey, and similarly for sour taste, it's not just all tamarind, but you use some lemon sometimes, some amchur sometimes. So as long as you have this variety, I feel it hits that balance. And when you have a variety, a byproduct of this, which is a good byproduct, is moderation. When you have so many options on your plate, a little bit of everything, so your chance of going overboard on particular food or a particular food group is less. So that, I would say, is my first, if you talk about healthy eating, that's my first point. And the second thing that I strongly believe in is, food that is close to its source. So you can look at it in two ways. So food that's not traveled too far, meaning locally grown, locally sourced. So if you think about it, I mean, yes, today we have the availability, everything can come to our house, but if you're talking about fruits that have been shipped all the way from New Zealand, kiwis, say, definitely, it's probably picked earlier so that it ripens on the way, or there's some preservative added so it looks fresh when it comes to us. So both in terms of distance from where the food comes, and also how close the food is to its original form. So something that's not processed too much, something that's not been modified too much. It looks closer to how it came from the soil. So that would be my second thing about healthy food or a healthy diet.
That's great, Aati. I agree completely with you with the whole variety and rotation. That definitely would, even I feel like that's something that would ensure a lot of healthy, pointers getting ticked. But Sharmila, you've done your research in this field for like really, really long, and you've written a book on it. You've got like great reviews on it, and as well as you've raised three kids. You've raised three boys who are now like quite, you've raised them. You three old sons, and you really have to tell us what is your take on it. How did you even get into this? Like, what made you? Have you always been a healthy eater or like a believer in this, or what's your story? How did you get into this, and how? Please tell us.
Thank you, Janani, and I absolutely agree with everything that Aarti said about eating variety, eating close to source, eating local, sustainable. Because that's been my background, rural development, working with farmers who are growing the produce and seeing how much work they put into it and how important it is to eat, to get it to markets in time. But my story is actually, I was a very, very busy working mom. I was a co-founder of NGOs in the Himalayas. So I used to travel a lot. So actually, honestly, I wasn't, though I knew a lot about food and agriculture and all, actually, I wasn't paying that much attention to healthy eating in my own family. I used to, travel and tell my helpers or my mom at home what to make for the kids. And when the wake up call came for me, when my youngest was 5 years old, and I realized he was not eating any fruits and vegetables, and he was getting sick all the time. So at that time, I decided that, actually my traveling also, I decided to take a break from the traveling part of my work, and started to focus a bit on what the family needed. I thought about, now, how do I get this kid to eat healthy, to start liking fruits and vegetables without forcing it? I mean, my husband's approach was like, you just sit and you have to eat it, and and that wasn't working. So I tried to I started to do courses on nutrition. Okay, what's good to eat, what's not good to eat. And what I learned actually was, the good stuff. Healthy eating to me is it's common sense. It's eating fruits and vegetables, whole grains, good fats, and some dairy. And we all grow up with that sense of what it is good to eat healthy, balanced meals. But what I learned was really how bad the bad stuff is. So if you ask me in a sentence now, how do I define healthy eating in our current worlds where we have so much of processed and convenience food, was we just cut the junk food. To me, that is the essence of, for today's, working parent, or for young kids, single working people. So I decided, when I, started to do my research and the awareness came, I decided to de-junk my kitchen and start cooking from scratch. As parents, we all buy junk food for our kids. We feed them, lovingly, indulgently. Mama, I want this. Daddy, I want this. And I used to buy Oreo cookies, choco pies, gummy bears, Tang, all kinds of things for my kids. And we do it, for convenience, not only for indulgence, but for convenience. But when I stopped the habit of buying, junk food, and started to cook everything from scratch and started to document my journey, the reason I became so passionate about sharing it was the health benefits of the family. I mean, my kids all had allergies and asthma, and they used to be on medication. They would be on inhalers, on nebulizers. But just doing a single act of cooking from scratch and stopping buying the junk food, the health of the entire family improved so much. My pediatrician started to say, you don't bring your kids to me any longer. What's the difference? And so that's why, I mean, to me, it's really, that's what it boils down to. And I wanted to share, this is my book called Everyday Love. I wrote about, lunch boxes that, putting in healthy lunch boxes. It was a big challenge for all the parents, the school PTA meetings. So it started with, writing about healthy lunch boxes, but then I started to realize that, how to get kids to eat healthy. What do we need to make our lives easier? Put in meal planning, wrote a section on nutrition, on how to bake. So it became this 5-year, basically labor of love, in which I documented what I was doing. And there's 170 recipes in that for easy, tasty, everyday cooking that the whole family can enjoy. So that's my story. And I'm, continuing to spread the word in whichever way I can.
Thanks, Shamila. I would definitely want to discuss more with you about how to cook healthy. But before that, I think the biggest topic that we all have to address is junk food. Like, what is junk food? We all know our definition of it. Is my definition of junk food has always been pizzas, burgers, excuse me, soft drinks, chocolates, anything that these are like obvious junk foods to me. But like grow up, you realize like an entire country lives on pizzas like as a staple, like how our sadam is, our rice is, like it's pizzas there. And you start wondering like what exactly is junk food. And then after a point, you start cutting down the obvious junk foods. But then one day I realized, no, things that I think are not that bad, and I pick it up from the supermarket, but then I realized that's also considered junk food. So this is a very gray area. I think like it'll be good to throw some light on that. So Aarti, like what do you think of junk food, and when you go shopping, what are the things that you normally buy and stock up? Like as Shamila put it, like convenience is the first thing that drives me to shop. And so what's yours? What's your take on it?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, many of us know what junk is. We have a feeling of what it is, but we can't stay away from it. That's the problem. So according to me, junk, like we all know, it's quite literally so nutritively degraded to the point that it can be considered junk. I mean, because of, I guess, all the factory and machine processing that goes into it, the kind of preservatives and additives that they add so that it can sit on our shelf life. I mean, on the store's shelves for longer. The flavor and appearance enhancers that they add to it, synthetic ones, so that it makes it that more appealing or irresistible. And also, they are definitely foods that are loaded with sugar or salt or those taste enhancers, which in a way kind of make it addictive too, right? Now, coming to the kind of junk that I buy, actually as a household, we do not buy that much, but there's still something. When you have growing children who go to school, who see everybody eat, they ask you. And so in our house, I would definitely say the biggest thing would be biscuits and chocolates, because there's so much variety, there's so much ads that come on TV, and you can't stop with, you want the chocolate flavor, you want the jam flavor, everything. There's just so much variety. And at least for us, it's because, children do not appreciate, they need a sweet fix, and they do not appreciate our traditional homemade, sweets. They just don't have a taste for it. They don't, anything that's wrapped, that's baked, that has icing, I mean, not to mean anything, negative about what you do, Janani, but, that has a separate appeal for them. So that's one of the things that I definitely buy. Another thing that I buy a lot is oats. Now, oats I feel is processed because it's, I'm talking about the instant oats, which take couple of minutes to cook, because like I said in the beginning, it's just so far removed from its original form. So, I call it junk, but I do feed it to my kids because it's a very easy breakfast option. You put milk with it. It feels like it's not that unhealthy, so I buy that. Another thing is the Tetra packed juices and milkshakes, maybe more milkshakes, because it's just so convenient to carry. You pack it, you throw it into the car when you go to pick up the kids. It's just easy to give them that one serving of, dairy. It just feels wholesome, and it feels very convenient. You don't have to packing is not an issue because it's already done. And another thing would be ketchup, because I think my kids just think everything tastes yummier with ketchup. So these would be, at least in my family, the kind of junk that we regularly buy.
Yeah, I think this is you like very reflective of almost all of us. Like ketchup and oats and biscuits are something that we all buy. Like, and most of us buy without giving it a second thought. Like it's convenient, it's okay, it's biscuits. And honestly, I've seen people carry like biscuits, like Mary biscuits, especially to hospitals to visit sick people. So you always like in my head, it's healthy, you know. And there are digestive biscuits. But yeah, like so to demystify this further, Sharmila, like so you would know this much better. So again, but
so
obvious junks, yeah.
no, so I think I just to share with the audience the definition of junk food, which is commonly known is basically food that's high in sugars, high in salt, high in the bad fats, and then made with refined flours. You know, so that's if you can look at foods and those foods, and basically these ingredients are also nutrient robbers. So basically, if you have foods high in sugar, high in salt, high in bad fats, they're literally robbing us, because when you eat these foods, you don't feel like eating anything else. You know, that's what happens when you give kids sometimes a couple of biscuits or a half a packet of biscuits that they don't want as a snack. You don't feel like eating any of the good food. So they essentially rob us of nutrients. But one of the things I'd like to first say in response to what you said, you know, we grew up thinking, okay, pizzas, burgers, French fries are junk food because there's a lot of, you know, international media, but there's a lot of our own Indian snacks and sweets that are also considered junk because they're also high in sugar, fat, salt, and made with refined flour. And I mean, that's everything. And it's the stuff we now buy from commercial bakeries, commercial sweet shops, you know, all our, and those are also junk. It's just that they're not maybe packaged like that, or they're not you know, they don't come in a package, so we don't read a label. But there's lots of junk food in our own. All our sweets and snacks actually are either deep fried or you know, high in fat and sugar. If we make them at home, it's different. But we tend to buy these also from, you know, sweet shops and snack shops. So junk food is not only burgers and pizzas, it's also lots of our Indian sweets and snacks. That's the first point I want to make. And secondly is I want to share guidelines. So when Aarti mentioned that, you know, one of the convenience foods that she likes to use are these milkshakes. So there are guidelines for salt, sugar, and fat given by the World Health Organization and our National Institute of Nutrition. So for sugar, that is 6 teaspoons a day. And 6 teaspoons a day of sugar is about 25 grams. Now, if you look at one of the packets of the Cavan's milkshake, which my kids also love, and my teenage son would not be happy with one. He would need at least 2 of those. Each of those little packets has 22 grams of sugar, you know? And so essentially one of those little milkshakes is your sugar for the day. So while we think that a milkshake would be, you know, a healthy thing, a wholesome, you know, supposedly convenience food for a kid or a fruit drink, if we actually look at it, it's really junk. I mean, there's a better way to get or the sugar will you know, counterbalance the little nutrition you're getting from the milk. So that's the point. There's lots of hidden sugars in all our processed and convenience foods. There's a lot of false advertising. I mean, if you looked at, you know, some of the breakfast cereals that we're bombarded with these days, they look healthy, they advertise healthy, they're fruit and fiber, but when you read the label, they actually have hidden sugars in so many different ways. So they'll say beetroot powder, pineapple concentrate, invert sugar, glucose. So even granola bars, when they are, you know, there's these protein bars and health bars, a lot of them advertise as healthy, but they're not so if you look into it. A lot of the drinks that we, you know, tend to conveniently feed our kids, Bonvita, Horlicks, the protein shakes and things like that. Again, not as healthy. Digestive biscuits. In fact, my mother's diabetic, and her nutritionist for years told her it was absolutely fine to have digestive biscuits because, again, it looks, you know, high fiber. When you actually read the label of a digestive biscuit, the first ingredient is maida, the second is sugar, the third is a hydrogenated fat, which is like a really bad fat, and then there's some bran in it. So it's essentially a junk food because the first 3 ingredients are things that are junk. So there's a lot of a lot of that, no good news at all actually on a lot of this front, unfortunately. So, I mean, that's
Right. So you actually covered quite a few foods that I was going to ask you. So what I'm going to do now is ask you a list of foods and actually tell us, is it junk or not? Because yeah, they do advertise, they do pride themselves on being like the healthy alternate, the healthy option. So
sure.
maybe start with yogurt, like Tetra Pak yogurts, low fat yogurts, junk or not?
Yeah, low fat yogurt has low fat, but it's very high on sugar. So it's actually, I would say it's junk.
So Tetra Pak juices, Olive Real and Tropicana, even with the no sugar added version.
Yeah, so most Tetra Pak juices, like the fruities, appies, are the highest in sugar. Like appy has 14 grams of sugar per 100 ml. So literally like a 200 ml of appy puts you over your sugar quota for the day, really. But even Tropicana 100% juice, though it doesn't have added sugar, there's so much of fructose in that, fructose, which is also in our body converts to sugar, right? So that actually is also sugar. So it's not a sugar-free drink. It's not, it's fine to have as a treat. I mean, I love it. It's nice to have once in a while, but it's much better to get to do a fresh juice. And ideally, of course, it's better to have the fruit because you have the fiber in it. So,
okay, what about these snackable nuts? Like you get roast peanuts, you get like salted broad beans, like all of those kind of nuts.
yeah, a lot of the ones that you can buy in a packet have been either flash fried, deep fried, so that they're nice and crunchy, and then a lot of salt, some additives, preservatives added into it. So you really need to read the label. Plain roasted is fine, and then you can maybe, but the ones, and a lot of the ones, those broad beans and things like that, like the masala peanuts and all, are essentially junk. All high in sugar. It's salt also, very high in salt.
Salt, yeah. Ready to fry things, like you have your ready to fry tikkis and all those.
Yeah, there's a lot of preservatives in those ready to fry frozen food. So preservatives, additives, and also a lot of oil. The reason they're ready to fry, and you can even actually just put them on a pan, there's a very, very high level of fat in them. Also salt and preservatives,
Right.
nitrites, which are not very good.
Okay, whole wheat bread.
Whole wheat bread. So whole wheat bread, first of all, is not whole wheat entirely. It'll be at least, I mean, when you bake, it'll be at least 50% of refined flour or maida in it. And they also add, again, additives, and there's one potassium bromate, which is actually banned in some countries, but all our bread manufacturers manage to put them in. So, I mean, I use it. I buy, whole wheat bread, but if you eat it in moderation, like, having a couple of slices and then you have it in a sandwich with a protein filling and some sliced tomato or something like that, it's fine. I mean, to me, it's okay. It's, I mean, it's better if you break your bread, but it's not so easy for everyone to bake their own bread, of course. So,
Popcorn.
popcorn made at home is fine. A popcorn without butter poured all over it is also fine.
Made at home, like with the kernels fresh, or with Act 2 and all has like instant microwave popcorn.
So you can buy the kernels from kernels from a store without just the plain kernels, not the Act ones, those ones that you put in the microwave, because that is also very high in salt and oil. But
alternate sweeteners, like right now it's about like the agave nectar or like brown sugar. I really think brown sugar is something you should address because everybody believes that's healthy.
Yeah, brown sugar is not much different from white sugar. It actually is sugar which has molasses added to it for the brown coloring. And so it's not really much healthier. Jaggery and honey are healthier sugars because they have vitamins, minerals, medicinal properties. Jaggery has iron, but they're also sugar. So everything in moderation. I think the message with sugar is one of the biggest toxins in our lives. I mean, when we're talking about COVID right now, this whole thing of comorbidities, it's all related to lifestyle diseases, which comes from basically consuming too much of sugar, too much of salt, and bad fat. So
okay, Tetra Pak milk, like milk, not milkshakes, but just milk that you get in these packs versus the fresh milk
that's a convenience food. I think if you're not drinking a whole lot of milk at a time and you need just a little bit for your tea, coffee and stuff like that, it's fine. It's not fresh, but you do get some nutrition from milk, and I mean a decent amount of nutrition from milk. It's just been processed to a level that keeps it fresh. So I think I'm okay with that if you're having it in small quantities. Plain milk.
and of course Maggi ready to cook soup. Those are probably.
Yeah, so Maggie noodles and all, the instant noodles, I mean, they're really bad for health. They're basically flour noodles that are fried first, deep fried, and then dried. And then the seasoning has a very high amount of salt. For example, your sodium, the ideal levels of sodium, recommended sodium a day is between 1500 gram mg to 2000 mg. And a 70-gram packet of Maggie gives you 862 mg. So if you've just had one, and I mean, again, if you're an adult or a teenager, one small packet is not enough. You need two. So if you have two Maggie noodles at one sitting, that's your salt quota for the day, essentially. And it's really not good for you, but we love it. Where once in a while is fine, everything in moderation. And no, a soup packets actually are interesting, because I did a thing with some kids also. When they read the labels, each soup packet, which is savory, had at least 2 teaspoons of sugar in it,
Wow.
which you wouldn't have expected.
So much sugar for like
Yeah.
pack of it. Wow.
Besides the salt.
Oh, so salt. Okay. Yeah. So sorry?
I said the soup packets, besides having a salty, but they also have sugar.
Sugar. Interesting. That's breakfast cereals is something that you already mentioned. But so you're saying like everything, like the plain cornflakes are, at least they don't taste like they have like sugar in it. But what are they? Like, are they?
Yeah, so plain cornflakes, then they're all processed, like Aarti said. All our food goes through at least some level of processing. Even our rice is processed to some extent. But the less processed you can do, the better. So ideally, I mean, for a breakfast cereal, a ragi or a sattama or something like that is actually even better, or a porridge, even a rolled oats porridge, and even an instant oat porridge where you add your own sweetening to it is still better than a ready-made cereal. But cereal is a great convenience food. And so when I buy cereals, I buy a wheat bran flake, which I know has some added sugar, but it's much, much less than chocos or some of the muesli products, which have, a lot more sugar. So I read the labels very carefully on the box. And my teenage kids right now, when they're, wanting to snack, especially in the middle of the night, I say, okay, just help yourself. They have, the wheat flakes, they put in some milk and they put in some honey. Or sometimes they don't need that, and that's the kind of cereal. But most cereal packets actually really need to read the label and see how much sugar they're in each portion.
Right. So if you were to give us some tips on shopping when you go to the supermarket, like what else do we avoid, like, and do you have any kind of shopping tips that you follow, like rules or tips?
Yeah, I think it comes up through everything I was saying, is really read the labels. I mean, that is the single most important thing that you can do when you go shopping, if you're wanting to eat healthy, because the labels tell you, but it's tricky to read labels. They make it very complicated. They're in such fine print that you can't see them, but they give you the guidelines of what's there, and the top 3 or 4 ingredients basically tells you what's in the product, and there's sugar, protein, fat, everything listed. So just learn to read labels and you'll be able to make healthy choices.
That's great. Like, I think that's quite useful. One of our biggest issues is breakfast and cereals, and those are like the biggest things that so good that we can add our own things, like get like whole oats, and thanks for those tips. But so the issue that I face as an adult usually is that I'm not conditioned to eat healthy. Like, I'm conditioned to eat my South Indian meal, great, but every time I think of eating healthy, it's a whole exercise. I have to think, oh my God, okay, I have to get my protein, I have to get my fat, it's an exercise. It takes time. It takes effort for me to make that change. I don't want that for my kid. Like, I want something where like my kid is conditioned to healthy eating, not just eating well, not just eating on time, but just insert that whole healthy idea of healthy eating right from the beginning. So it comes down to like children, like catching them young ultimately. So how, Aarti, what do you do to ensure your kids are, in sync with you in the process of healthy eating?
Jani, I absolutely agree with you. So you've got to catch them young, and this has to be something that they imbibe and something that comes from within, because then it's easier to make good choices. So my kids I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So still on the younger side, but it's surprising, even at this age, there's so much that you can do along with them. And I would say the common thing that runs through all that you can do is just having conversations about food. Food has to be something that you talk about, not just at meal times, but, not about just obsessing about food, but have relevant conversations about food. So one thing that I do a lot, I mean, nowadays we get so many, forwards, we have access to so many great talks and documentaries, TED Talks and documentaries on food. And as a family, including my younger middle one who's 5 years old, we've watched, a lot of these documentaries. We've watched these talks, and so we sit together as a family, not just play it and have them, but you pause, you have some discussions. They ask you questions, not in a forced way, but in a more organic way. So because there's so much access, we get forward. So anytime there's something relevant to that age, we always, both my husband and myself, we share it with the kids. We watch it with them, we talk about it. Another thing that I do, I believe firmly in, is having the kids engage with you and be involved in every step of the, the food cycle or the food process. Starting with growing of food. How does it grow? So luckily, my mother-in-law's house, where we stay right next door, she's got a terrace upstairs where she grows vegetables, and we have a farm where we grow paddy, different fruits and vegetables. So both my older kids regularly, visit the farm. They're exposed to how things are sown, how sowed rather, how it's harvested, how you take care of it, what kind of manure, and not something that's forced down their throat, but just by taking them there, by exposing them, they also do gardening as part of their schoolwork. So when they're involved in something like that, kids are inherently curious, so there'll be lots of meaningful conversations which you can have, which arises from their curiosity, not something that you put down as a point saying we've got to discuss about this. So one step is the food growing. The other thing that I do is, as inconvenient as it is at times, I take my kids shopping when I go to, buy the supermarket, yes, but more when I go to the vegetable market, and I actually let them pick vegetables. And it's okay if they throw in, a spoiled tomato or something, it's fine. But the number of interesting questions, that comes up is incredible. I've had my children ask me, my older ones asked me, because they along with fresh fruits and vegetables, they'll also have cut vegetables, there's cut snake gourd or cut something. He'll be like, why don't you buy it? Isn't it more convenient? You don't have to sit, and cut it. So then you organically talk about how that's something that's cut and left is definitely nutritionally degraded. Then, when I buy certain fruits like watermelon or grapes, I will always buy it only from the organic, because I have read that these are especially pesticide or, dense. So then, they want to know, why don't you bought the other fruits here, why didn't you buy? So, just venues for questions like that. Another thing that I involve them is in the whole, not the real cooking, but the nothing to do with fire, but definitely in the prepping, the washing, the cutting of vegetables. And because both of them have been in Montessori schools, they're very excited about, grating and chopping and peeling and all of that. So, and we have a separate compost bin. We collect all the food scraps. That's where it's disposed. They know that it goes into a separate compost pot downstairs. So, as they're cutting, they're so conditioned that they put it into it. And then obviously there was why do we do this? Why don't we just put it in trash? How does it turn into manure? They've seen it being used in our garden as manure, so I just feel by involving them, however young the kids are, age appropriately, by involving them at the different steps, not only do they feel involved, they're more aware, and they definitely feel more of a connection to the plate that they see in their food. But more important than all of that, it comes back to that, the opportunity and the avenues that it creates for talking about food boils down to the same. The conversation on food is ongoing. Then it becomes, I'm hoping that it'll be imbibed in them to the point that, they'll realize when they have to make their own choices when it comes to food.
No, I'm sure it will be. That's very inspiring, and it's actually giving me also a lot of ideas. And Sharmila, what would you add to this?
I think Aarti is just doing exactly. It's like, if I had to write a textbook, a paragraph on what to do, how to introduce your young kids to, the conversation with food, she's doing it all. And so I think that's amazing. Kids learn what they live with, and food preferences and all that is learned. So if we set an example, we take the trouble to have these conversations about food, to show them how food is grown. I was fortunate that when my kids were growing up, I was working in an NGO, so they got to visit villages with me, right from the time they were 1. It was tough to travel with them to rural India, but I did that. So they were exposed right from a young age. But a lot of our kids these days don't even know. I was having a conversation with some teenagers, and none of them had actually even seen how rice grows, and they didn't know how it. So it's so important to, make, even when you travel, make the time to maybe stop by a village, see how things are growing, and involve them with these conversations. The flip side of it, which I would add to all what Aarti is doing, was actually to start while they're young, showing them things like, how do you read the labels? Okay, this milkshake is nice, but look at the label. Can you tell me how much sugar is in it? And multiply that 100 ml by 2, because that's, the label will be as 100. So you can actually do a little math. It's great fun exercise for young kids, because every label requires a little bit of multiplication or division or something like that. So you can actually, from a young age, teach them to do that. There are lots of online videos, all animated and things, to teach them what sugar does to your body. It's really like a drug. It's toxic. And so I think I would add to everything Aarti said, is to, educate, give them the health education of some of the junk food from a young age. Also, it's, cooking and baking with kids, it's so sensorial. It's everything you do, like baking bread, for example, or it's, you touch, you knead, you smell, you feel. So there's so many sensorial activities involved in cooking, and build so much of independence and skills. So, great to do this all from a young age.
Thanks, Shamila. So what I would add to this is something that you probably shouldn't do. That's like a mistake that I noticed my parents, my daughter's grandparents making, and across, is using food, or like the whole idea of eating as just a metric to get something, right? Like you finish your greens, it's a negotiation tactic. The whole idea of eating is sometimes considered as an exercise rather than an experience. So that's also something that I think we should correct there, and get them into not just cooking, right? Like whole eating, like eating with family, like the love, the fond memories associated with food. I think all of those are also quite important. And anyway, so I'm like, at this point, to take a break from the serious discussions, let's do like a nation wants to know, or like a coffee with Karan. So I have like some rapid fire questions for you. So I'm just going to like shoot them out. Like Aarti, you will go first, and then Sharmila, you'll give me your answer next. So yeah, okay. So now I'd like to start on a scale of 1 to 10, like 1 being the not so much and 10 being like really, really a lot. Like, how, number 1, like how impromptu are you in your cooking?
3.
How impromptu, like how do you like do it just on the spot? Like how impromptu are you? 3.
Definitely for me, yeah, or lower.
Sharmila?
Yeah, sure.
The same?
But I didn't hear what.
No. Oh, okay. Never mind. Like I just I don't think you heard. Cool. What's your favorite food-based movie, Aarti?
Food-based movie. Wasn't there a movie about Julia Child? I mean, her
Julia
and Julia, right?
Okay. And Sharmila?
I recently watched one called Chef, which I enjoyed.
Okay. Lovely. Mine's the 100-foot journey. That's again like a lot of people I went with found it really boring, but I absolutely loved it.
That's a lovely.
So okay, I'm going to give you 2 options. And what would you pick between these 2? Like Aarti, like fruit versus fruit juice.
Fruit.
Okay. Sharmila, salad versus sundal.
Salad.
Okay. Aarti, dosa versus ade.
Ade.
And Sharmila, like vade versus bhaji.
Vade.
Aarti, white sauce versus red sauce.
Red sauce.
Okay, awesome. Okay, what are your least favorite tasks in the kitchen?
Cleaning up.
I'd say the same.
Oh yeah? Mine's peeling garlic. Like I think that just makes me feel so bad the entire day. Okay, so Aarti, what are your 2 favorite ingredients? Like things that you can't live without, like always in your kitchen? Use them a lot.
Ginger.
Okay, one's good. Don't worry. Sharmila.
I think in cooking, I love garlic. So, but I sometimes, like during the lockdown, I got my teenage son to sit in front of his TV and clean all the garlic himself. So,
Okay. So what's the one snack item that you carry when you travel?
Nuts.
Sharmila?
I make my own granola bars. The recipes in my book, and I carry those. That's a great snack for hungry kids, working people, anything. I always have one in my bag.
Lovely.
Like almost a meal.
Awesome. Okay, Aarti, what's the one food that you dislike but you will advise others to eat, or you force your children to eat?
Force my children to eat. I force them to eat every possible fruit. There's no, I don't like the taste. You just have to eat it.
No, but what about you? Like, do you secretly dislike them?
Yeah, I do. Actually, papaya is something I just started eating recently as an adult. But I insist that even my 2-year-old has to eat. Thankfully, he likes it. But there's just no question on every fruit has to be eaten.
Okay. So Sharmila, once you moved to a healthy lifestyle, what food did you miss? Like, what food do you still miss? Like
Actually, nothing. We cook everything at home. I think a lot of the homemade, the pizzas, burgers and all we make actually ended up tasting better than the fast food restaurants. So there's nothing I miss. And we do go out and eat at nice restaurants once in a while. There's, as I said, I make my own muesli, I make my own bread, and it all actually tastes better. It really does. I mean, some of the homemade treats all will generally taste better than what you can buy. So don't miss anything.
Okay, so Aarti, favorite cuisine and why?
Lebanese. I think the flavors are just so enjoyable.
Right. And Sharmila?
Thai food. I love Thai. I love the balance of sweet, salt, hot, and sour that they have in Thai food, and the complexity, and they make it so tasty.
Amazing. Okay, last question. Aarti, what's your signature?
So I would eat Indian on a daily basis. I have to qualify. I think if I had a favorite cuisine, it is Indian first, and then
everyday cuisine, right? Yeah. That apart from that, when you probably travel, when you go out, like what's the cuisine that you would probably pick for a restaurant choice and all that? Aarti, signature dish.
Signature dish, but something that I make that the kids really love is this whole either couscous or some rice layered with roasted vegetables, topped with some cheese, and you layer and bake it, and it's healthy, but it's really yummy. So,
Sharmila, I'm sure you have a lot, but
actually, I think right now, especially the lockdown, I shared a recipe of a chocolate fudge cake, which I put on my blog, and it has given it. I'm just like known for that. Almost every day I get somebody saying, I made your chocolate cake. It's so easy and it's so delicious. So I think if I had to, it's not healthy, but it's a treat that's easy to make. And, in the lockdown where there were no bakeries and all open, everyone made it and they found it really fun and easy to make. And I put it in my book because it was the first thing one of my youngest son cooked on his own. It's very, very easy. Anyone can make it. So check it out.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Like, you guys are quite on your feet there. But okay, so let's go back into topic. The one big concern that most of us have as parents, like we all work, most of us work, and balancing, forget like just regular putting out food for your family when you're working, like now actually going the step to make out and put out a very healthy menu plan, prep, like what nots, right? Like, and cater to people's, your children's dietary requirements, or like, what they like and not like. It's a big challenge. It's personally a challenge to me. And I'm sure, Aarti, like you would have faced a lot as a working parent. Like, so how did you deal with that? How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm thinking about why it becomes so many times. I think about why it becomes so much harder when you're a working parent to plan, because when you look at it again on the face, it just seems like a lot of effort. It's very time consuming, and the whole task of planning and really trying to serve healthy meals for every meal, it seems like a lot of effort. It seems like a very daunting effort actually. And I think as a working parent, the biggest thing it boils down to is you not having supreme control. You kind of are dependent on your support network, which could be your family, your parents, your in-laws, your nannies, your cooks. And, it's kind of difficult to expect all of them to be on the same page when it comes to, dietary requirements of your kids. It's just a lot more harder to, delegate and get your quality expectations when you have such a big support network who are supporting, who are helping you with this whole process of, feeding your kids. I also personally, I feel as a working mom, when kids due to peer pressure or, just being exposed through whatever ads or friends or whatever, when they come and ask you for unhealthy choices, you just don't have the bandwidth to, reason with them, to explain, to negotiate. So you give in. And another big factor why you give in, I feel, is this whole guilt thing. You feel like you're not there to, when they come back from school, you don't go to pick them up, you send your nanny and your driver. And then sometimes you feel like if you send, a good snack, a junk snack, then, you're elevated in their eyes, So these are ongoing, issues that I face as a working mom.
Yeah, very relatable, like very, very relatable, especially the guilt part and this whole, you plan a system and then like one visit to the grandparents and everything goes haywire, everything. And they come back expecting the same kind of treatment. Like, yeah, I can completely relate to that. Sharmila, how would you advise the working parents?
Yeah, I was a working, traveling mom for about 15 years. And to me, the biggest stress buster I had when I was about food issues was to make a weekly meal plan. And I think if you spend those 10-15 minutes on a weekend planning ahead for the meal, first of all, the things that we started discussing that Arshti mentioned, eating variety. If you plan for it, you'll actually be able to eat that variety. You can add greens one day and the yellow vegetables and the fruits, and each day plan for a different dal or bean or, whichever millet or whole grain you want to incorporate. So that's health. So meal planning to me is one of the single most things. I wrote a whole chapter in my book on meal planning, and it's very easy. You just take a sheet of paper, or you can do it on your phone or whatever, and you script, write down what you want, for across the week for breakfast, school lunches when we needed to pack school lunches, an after school snack, and your dinner. And then, I've recycled those same meal plans for years, and that really, really helps with planning. And then I prep. So yeah, as you said, the biggest thing, you want to give a snack that's tasty and healthy. So honestly, I would end up making those snacks. So on the weekend, when I had time, I would make bake a nice treat like an oat cookies or a ragi cookies or some cake or the other, or muffins, a lot of whole wheat muffins, and use not only my oven, but my freezer. So, when you can freeze a lot of food and they'll stay actually quite healthier than they do in the fridge. So I prep accordingly. Like I make hummus from chana, and that's a year-round snack in my house. I freeze half of it, I keep half in the fridge. Anybody needs a healthy snack. So, making a meal plan and then prepping using your oven and freezer, to me, is a great combination for, healthy eating and to get the stress out of, what to make every day. Otherwise, you wake up in the morning and say, oh God, what do I make, for that day? So, and you shop accordingly also. You can, if you plan ahead, you can shop better.
Great. That's really cool tips. Like the whole idea of sitting and planning sounds intimidating, but I'm sure once you get into it, it's not as, right? Like and the convenience that will add to your life, like the more seamless these things go. But again, having said that, like change is not something that can happen overnight for like most people. Like definitely, like personally speaking, I can't. Like I am still intimidated by the idea of switching completely to a healthy diet. I would want to at some point, but like it's like push it, like go slowly towards it. But so I would really like to make small changes to embrace the lifestyle as such, because this is going to be a lifestyle shift. This is not just about making a few tweaks to things. It's going to be a lifestyle shift. So what are the possible next few steps? Like Aarti, what if you were to move to healthier? Like from whatever you said, like yeah, going to your lifestyle would be a healthy version for me. But if you were to switch to something even more healthier than what you have now, what are the first two immediate changes you would make?
So you know what, I'm going to just steal Sharmila's idea here, because this is something I've experienced too, but I don't do it as regularly. This whole planning over the weekend, like you say, it seems like, oh my God, you've got to drop a plan for the whole week's, 4 meals a day. It seems like a lot of work, but the few times that I've done it, it's just 15 minutes, work. And as your kids get older, you can, again, coming back to that whole having a conversation with your child, you can include them in that whole plan and have discussions around it, right? And when you do that, the few weeks that I do that, as opposed to looking into the fridge and just when the bhaiya enters and says, okay, what shall we make, sort of a thing, I always feel that our meals have been healthier. So, and like she says, you can circulate the meal plan every couple of weeks or every 3 weeks, you can make tweaks depending on how your children respond to that meal or something. So I think that's an easy first step to take. And when you see the benefits of it, I'm sure you'll be convinced to carry that forward. Another thing that I feel I can make, because I have this notion that sweets or baked items is something that has to be bought from outside. I have this fear of the oven, and I just feel it's so much work, it's messy, and so we focus so much on the meal. Is the child eating a good healthy breakfast, a good healthy lunch, a dinner? Then we completely forget about snacks, where children don't feel hungry only at those 3 meal times. So if you plan everything healthy and snacks, they're just downing 2-3 bourbon biscuits or something, it kind of beats the purpose. So I feel even if you have biscuits, if there are say 4 or 5 snacks that your children normally gravitate to, if you can reduce that 5 to having 3 which are homemade, it could be a mix of salty things and sweet things. Even 60% reduction in that is a start, and I think that's something that even things like puffed rice put together with something, it can make some seeds and stuff, it can make a healthy and tasty thing as well. So kind of wiping out this notion that snack has to be only store bought, I think would be a second thing. And another thing that I was thinking about is you can't live without junk. I mean, it's so hard to just completely eliminate, just for all the reasons we've talked about, but if junk becomes a part of your meal and not the meal itself, then I think we're okay. Well, we've explored and seen what are all the things, masquerading as good foods, but are actually junk, even your whole wheat bread and all that. So for instance, if you're sending snack for your child, instead of it being 2 biscuits and a Cavin's milkshake, it could be 1 biscuit. It could be a handful of nuts. It could be some cut fruit. Similarly, this I've actually seen with my kids. When you give them 3-4 different things on their plate, they get very, instead of just having like 3 slices of buttered bread, with something, if it is, a couple of tiny adais, some cut fruit, then 2-3 pieces of wafers and one other thing, when they have 4 on their plate, and it's smaller portions. Maybe I'm talking from a small children point of view, but I've seen that they get excited about it, they enjoy the food and it's gone quicker. So if junk, you can have it, but make it a smaller portion instead of that being the prime thing in the meal. So
I completely agree with that, right? Like everything in moderation. Ultimately, it's very difficult to wipe out things like completely without, either suffering or like facing the wrath of children that have actually grown up with this all the while, like, and suddenly. But yes, this whole idea of moderation and kind of disguising it, one, like you're right, like some potato chips on a plate along with something else will make the whole plate feel appealing, right? Like, so I think that's acceptable. And Sharmila, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to share, respond to Janani, is that we have this whole, like almost a myth. It is like, healthy eating is difficult. It's not actually. And healthy is not tasty. The other myth is that, or a misconception is that healthy is not tasty. Actually, healthy can be really tasty. It can be really easy. So, making, for example, I always tell people I can make, muffins or cookies at home faster than I can go to a store and buy it and come back. Honestly, 15 minutes of putting it together, 15 minutes in the oven, you've got a, whole wheat, muffins with pumpkins, apples, oats, all kinds of things. And when you cook for yourself, you know what you're putting into it. So you know how much sugar, you know how much you're putting butter rather than, dalda, the ingredients. So I'm still a big advocate of, making that time on the weekend or whenever you have time with your kids or without them to just make those healthy snacks. And then you'll actually eat one, if you make an oat and nut cookie, you'll probably eat one of that rather than eat 3, bourbon biscuits, because those are much more wholesome. They fill you up faster. So that's one of the points of just, it's not difficult. And the other point was to, read labels, which we've talked about healthy eating, and to understand, to get kids and yourself to understand what's, healthy in the food. And to remember that, when you cook from scratch, it's not only good for you, but it's good for the environment too, because there's so much of layers of packaging, in all our cartons, layers of biscuit packaging and everything that we use. So when I've been making peanut butter for years now, I've saved, I don't know how many hundreds of jars of peanut butter by not buying that. I recycle the same one jar, right? So just that consciousness, I think it's not only good for our health, but it's good for the health of the planet by making. And of course, in moderation, we would have a rule of sometime food versus anytime food. So the sometime food was like the junk food. Of course, definitely that handful of chips, that, a couple of cookies, all of it is fine, as long as, the general conversation is about heading in the right direction. So.
So Shamila, if I can ask you some tips on to start with a meal plan, let's say, like I think it's about like your macros. Let's start with your macros, like especially for children. There's like protein, there's fats, and like doing a research again sounds like a big deal. But like, so if you were to suggest like maybe like two items, two ingredients each that we can work with when we want to ensure like our kids get that protein, they get that kind of fat hit, like good fats. So maybe just like 2-3 food groups in each category.
Yeah, with protein, just a guideline. Protein nutritionists tell us that we need to have 1 gram of protein per kilo body weight. So if you weigh, like if your child weighs say 30 kilos, they need about 30 grams of protein. So the quickest sources actually, if you're vegetarian, would be, I mean, if you eat eggs, eggs is a very quick and nutritious source of protein. 1 egg will give you 7 to 8 grams, but a cup of milk will also give you 7 or 8 grams of protein. A cup of dal will give you, 12 grams of protein. So that's, beans are very good. Beans. So vegetarian sources of proteins would be milk, dairy products, but not like an Amul cheese slice, for example. They advertise, so this is like a false advertising. They advertise like a glass of milk in every cheese slice. But I'd much rather suggest that you have the glass of milk, because the cheese slice contains a lot of salt, it's processed, and it's very high in fat, So yeah, I mean, I would say protein from good milk sources and beans. And of course, if you eat meat, small quantities of lean meat are great. Fats to avoid are the what they call hydrogenated vegetable fats. So the daldas and vanaspatis, and unfortunately all commercial products, the puffs in the bakeries, the cream cakes, all of that, and our biscuits are made with those trans fats. So read the labels to find that out, and use a mix of, your own cold processed oils at home if you're cooking, the chucky pressed oils, which are better for you. Grains, I would say, a combination of some white rice, get your kids to eat red rice. When I make dosas now, it's always half and half. So my general rule is, half and half, make half your grains whole. So incorporate those. And of course, fruits and vegetables in as many ways as you can. I've cheated my kids for years by making beetroot chocolate cake and putting sweet potatoes in muffins and all kinds of things. But it took its time, and we had some jokes about it, but it worked out.
No, that's great. Like, I mean, this is a great discussion because again, like personally for me, as I started out with healthy cooking, healthy eating, oh my God, like so not my thing. But I definitely, I'm glad because this is the right time for me to have joined this conversation also. I have a 4-year-old who's just about defining her taste. I am still getting to know her day by day. She was the kid that ate like bitter gourd when she was 2, and like now I don't dare to give her that. Like I'm quite sure she won't. And like in fact, like one of these days during the lockdown, it was just both of us, and I was just asking, what do I make? Like I got into the habit of like documenting recipes on Instagram. So I'm like, what do I make? What do I make? She's like, Amma, I want jalebi. Like I'm like, oh my God, like my daughter's asking for jalebi. Like go through it, like go do all the research, and like a lot of preparation, and it wasn't that difficult, but it's quite like it made me get it right in the first try, and I got it. Like it's an amazing plate. I go give it to her proudly, and she's like, what? Like I'm like, I made jalebi. I don't want. I'm like, what is I don't want? Like you just ask. Like, no, you just ask me what do you want me to make. Like I don't like it. I don't want to eat it. Like I'm just giving you idea. And like, it's coming from a 4-year-old, right? Like I still don't understand. Like I'm not sure whether to be happy that she's not getting into the junk by default, naturally, or to whack her for making me go through all this effort and like having like a plate full of jalebis for nothing. But yeah, so food is, I think, a kitchen and food is something that we've always felt connected to, like working mothers in there with our children. And yeah, like I mean, if you would like to share some fun experiences of yours in the kitchen, like your beetroot cake was funny, like please, like yeah, maybe share some more.
I was asking my son to say, I said, can you think of any funny stories around food? He said, Mama, food is either terrible or it's good, and we've experienced it all. So, and he reminded me of times where I've tricked them with, all these muffins, and they've had them, and it's like, what do you think is in it? And I said, sweet potato, or, got them to eat the chocolate cake and then told them later it was beetroot. But so it's been all those kinds of, fun stories and that we have around food. But
what about you? Aarti, could you unmute?
Since this question came up, I've been wondering about, is there any funny story to share from my kitchen? But I I remember there was this, one time where it was just, so we hadn't had kids, and my husband and myself were in the US. And, so if you have friends for dinner, I'm one of these type A people that everything has to be perfect. I don't, I was prepping and cooking, and the plan was to have malai koftas, which I'd never made. So, so I looked up the recipe, I made the gravy and made the stuffing, and all that was left was to fry it and throw it into the gravy. And, it was already evening. I thought, I should fry it and, close it to the evening and put it. The minute I started throwing it into the oil, the first two came out beautifully, but then it started disintegrating, and I immediately Google searched. I think the time was odd for me to call my mom and, have an SOS call. But so, I kept trying, and ball after ball, it just kept disintegrating. And I was in tears, and I was like, what am I going to do with, this? And I remember my husband said, we always have a load of peppers. Then in the US, you get all colored peppers, capsicum, that is. So he was like, why don't you just stuff it into capsicum and roast it, and then just throw the gravy on? So it was an idea that came from him, but actually it worked out perfect. And because it was fried, put into capsicum, it tasted really nice. And so now every time, and I make stuffed capsicum a lot. I stuff it with different things, with rice, with vegetables, everything. My kids love it. If you just top some cheese on it, they love it. So every time, I make that, I'm always reminded of that once where I made a mistake and found this new amazing dish. So
impromptu, these mistakes, I think they lead to like our signatures, like the best dishes that no Google search, nothing could have helped you. Like that's a great thing I'm sure you came up with. Okay, so Sharmila, one last question towards you. So what about all these new age thinkings? Like now there's like a lot of veganism, there's a lot of milk is considered like not as healthy, there's white rice versus like the other rice, or gluten. All of these things are like, I'm not sure, like trends that are coming in like recently. They're getting fairly popular these days. So could you throw some light on it? Like at what age, like do you get children into it, if at all? You're a vegan, like should your children grow up to be a vegan, or any light you can throw on these trends?
Sorry, I'm good. I've got this call in the background. I'll just make sure I cut it because it's very loud. 1 minute.
So this is actually a question from our viewers.
In the new age thinking, I think the message I have for everyone is really to go back. Our traditional food, the food our mothers and grandmothers cooked, was really the best kind of food to eat. The kind of traditional grains, to eat local, seasonal. And one of the messages I wanted to share with everybody is that we spend so much on the best education for our kids. We the best books, toys, and extracurricular classes. But in the long run, I mean, when you're at my age, middle aged and more, we realize that the most important thing for us is health, right? And without that, we have nothing. Besides, of course, family is important, and love of family and friends. But it's so important to kind of bring all these things, into our kids' education, and teach them about healthy food and give them that health and nutrition education right from a young age. So there's a lot of, as I said, there are a lot of new things in the food, the quality of milk. Yes, there's issues related to, antibiotics and hormones and things that are being added to make our food grow faster and grow better. And definitely those should be avoided to a large extent. But what we were eating traditionally, what is local and seasonal for our area, is I think the best thing to eat in the long run.
Okay, thanks.
I hope that answered your question to some extent.
I hope to too. Like it was actually a question from one of our viewers, so I'm hoping they got some clarity on it too. So I think that kind of brings us to the end. We've discussed quite a bit, and ultimately I think we all agree that we all strive like really hard to give our kids the best of what we can. Let it be their education, let it be what they wear, let it be quality of life in every way. And food is something we all actively believe that it's something that we should take care of. We are doing it to the best of our ability, but unknowingly we do make some compromises here and there, and that's okay. I guess like instead of beating ourselves up or feeling guilty about it, like let's go step by step. Let's like try first, like maybe like negate whatever we've been doing wrong, like come back to a neutral, like stop the wrongs, and then maybe like look at a shift into the actual right direction. Because I guess nutrition is one area where like tiny small steps at this point is going to make a huge difference for them going forward in life. So I guess like what I would probably do next is like be aware of what my child actually needs, like what needs to go into her body for like a very healthy, sustained, like proper good quality of life, and then maybe compare it with what I actually have been putting it into. So that by itself, I think, will give me a clarity about how we're going to go. So ultimately, yeah. So I think we've all gotten some really good tips from both of you, and like I'm glad I was able to share some too. So yeah, I think we had a great session there. So maybe like Prabha, over to Prabha.
Yeah, thank you so much, Janani. I mean, what a wonderful conversation this has been between the three of you, right? Very, very simple ideas, from your own kitchens uh, to, to your own stories as mothers, as working women, your own personal journey into food, your understanding of this from a very personal family history perspective, looking at traditional foods to what it really means today for, especially when you're raising children today who have so much more expectations in terms of food from parents. It's been really a conversation that all of us can relate to, and I think there's been something in it that each of us can take away, right? Like when you busted some of those myths that reminding us that milk in a carton and milkshakes are perhaps not really healthy, to some really practical advice that you had that we can actually start to use straight away on our next shopping trip. I'm sure I'm going to go look out for some ragi or sattamavu, and for a change, perhaps I'm going to be the one who reminds my mom that I want the next pack of sattamavu rather than her asking me every month, have you run out of your stock? And I'm sure I'm going to be looking at that rather than going for that box of cereal, down the Nilgiri ale. So it's been lovely with that practical advice you've given. And I think also for many of us, we go through that mommy guilt, right, as working mothers. So you sort of put some of that discomfort to rest to say, let's do it in moderation, and it's okay once in a while to allow children to do that. Have a little portion of junk, but perhaps you also make it a little bit of a variety in that plate, and you give them a couple of healthy options, a couple of junk, and perhaps it's going to go up in a jiffy. So lots of practical tips over there. And Sharmila, I'm definitely going to check out that planning section of your book. You said there's a whole section dedicated to that, and that's something I have repeatedly tried and failed many a times as a working mother. So that's something I am definitely going to go back and check out from your book. Lovely. I mean, it's been a wonderful conversation this evening. At Akshar Arbol, we often talk of the learning community coming together. The learning community of the teachers, the parents, and the community at large coming together for our children. And I think this evening's been really rather special with both Aarti and Janani, who are parents in the AIS community. Aarti is also a teacher within the community, and we've had Sharmila, who's been our guest this evening, sharing some wonderful ideas and tips to all the viewers out there. Just to let you all into a little thing that's cooking at school. We are cooking together a community project of nutritive recipes from the AIS teacher, parent, and student community. It's a part of our community outreach program, and we will be putting it out there sometime in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be delighted to bring that out to the larger community.
Lovely.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think eating healthy is a choice rather than a chore. And I think it's one that can be cultivated in so many ways with our children. So let's bring in more conversations about food. Let's build that healthy nation together. For all of you who are watching us, have a wonderful Sunday ahead, and let's get back into our kitchens with a renewed interest to cook a ladleful of simple, wholesome love. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks, Lord.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.